My family is in the worst mess. Brooke doesn't talk to us. She's had twins.
That was a television studio. Bright lights. Cameras rolling.
Lost the face probably 4 or 5 times, kick her in the legs, just belittle her, pull her hair. Well, what caused all this? Nothing.
And suddenly, a man drops to the floor unconscious, blood pooling around his head.
Mean? Well, Brooke didn't seem to do anything. Brooke didn't spill her glass of Coca-Cola at the table during dinner. She wasn't talking.
Standing over him is one of the biggest stars in wrestling history, Hulk Hogan.
Came back and being disrespectful. She was just being a kid, and that got her ass beat uncomfortably.
Racist. I definitely
This wasn't part of a wrestling match. This was real life.
would not want things that I say behind closed doors, and I'm sure you wouldn't or anybody else watching. Nobody would want their lowest.
And it was just the beginning of a story that shows us the man behind the muscles, the icon behind
Moment to be filmed and aired for the world to see.
Was on the pain pills. I did have doctors just writing prescriptions.
and the image. Today, we're diving deep into the dark side of Hulk Hogan.
After prescriptions, and all of a sudden it becomes a vicious cycle. As they were giving me the pain meds, I was in
When you think of professional wrestling, one name probably comes
crazy pain. I couldn't even function. But as soon as things started to wind down, they would
to mind before all others. Hulk Hogan. The blonde.
keep giving me the pain meds. It got to a point where when I had the 10th back surgery,
Blonde hair, the bandana, the incredible physique, and that famous mustache.
the pharmacy would call me, "Your prescription's ready."
For millions of fans around the world, Hogan wasn't just a wrestler. He was a hero. He was someone kids looked up to. He told them to say their prayers and take their vitamins. He made wrestling cool. He made it mainstream. But like so many heroes, the real person behind the character had secrets. Some of them were shocking, some of them were painful, and all of them changed how people saw this legendary figure. Let's go back to where it all started. Terry Bollea, the man who would become Hulk Hogan, was just a regular teenager living in Tampa, Florida. When he was 16 years old, he discovered professional wrestling. He would watch matches on television and attend live shows whenever he could. He was fascinated by a wrestler named Dusty Rhodes, who people called the American Dream. Terry loved how Dusty could connect with the crowd. Later, another wrestler caught his attention. His name was Billy Graham, and he had an absolutely massive, muscular body. Terry wanted to look just like him. But wrestling wasn't Terry's only passion. He loved music too. For more than 10 years, he played bass guitar in different rock bands. He was so serious about music that he even dropped out of college to focus on it. While he was playing in these bands, he started working out at the gym. He wanted to build his muscles, and he worked hard at it. Before long, people started noticing his incredible physique. One night, after playing a show at a bar, someone approached him. They asked if he'd ever thought about becoming a wrestler. Terry was interested, so he agreed to try it out. His first training session was absolutely brutal. His trainer was a tough Japanese wrestler named Hiro Matsuda. During their very first session together, Matsuda actually broke Terry's leg. Can you imagine? Your first day trying something new, and you end up with a broken leg. Terry had to wait more than 2 months before he could train again. But he didn't give up. When he came back, Matsuda pushed him hard, testing him and challenging him every single day. After a full year of this intense training, Terry finally got his first real wrestling match in August of 1977. But things didn't go smoothly at first. Terry couldn't get along with his demanding trainer, so he left wrestling for a while. He got a job working as a bouncer at a nightclub called the Anchor Club. Eventually, he became the manager of the club. He and the owner got along really well, and together they opened their own gym. But deep down, Terry missed wrestling. He wanted to get back in the ring. His old hero, Billy Graham, helped him get a job at a wrestling company in Alabama. Terry impressed everyone there, and soon he was wrestling in Tennessee and Georgia too. By the fall of 1979, something big happened. He joined the World Wrestling Federation, which was run by a man named Vince McMahon Sr. McMahon loved Terry's look and his personality. He gave him a new name that would become famous all over the world: Hulk Hogan. At first, Hogan didn't become a huge star in America right away, but he went to Japan and wrestled there, becoming very popular. Then, in December of 1983, everything changed. Vince McMahon's son, who had the same name as his father, bought the wrestling company from his dad. This younger Vince McMahon had big dreams. He didn't want the World Wrestling Federation to just be popular in one area. He wanted it to be a nationwide sensation, and he chose Hulk Hogan to be the face of his company. Hogan came back to the WWF and immediately became a fan favorite. Just a few weeks later, he won the championship. This was the birth of Hulkamania. Millions of fans, called Hulkamaniacs, went crazy for him. Kids wore his merchandise. Adults cheered for him. He was everywhere. And Vince McMahon planned to make him the main attraction of the very first WrestleMania in March of 1985. But then something terrible happened that almost ruined everything. Just days before WrestleMania, Hogan appeared on a comedy show hosted by Richard Belzer. Hogan was there with the actor Mr. T to promote their upcoming match. During the interview, Belzer asked Hogan to show him one of his wrestling moves. Hogan tried to say no, explaining that the floor was hard and he didn't want to hurt anyone. But Belzer kept pushing, so Hogan put him in what's called a front chokehold. Within seconds, Belzer passed out. Hogan let go of him, and Belzer's unconscious body fell to the floor. His head hit the ground hard, and he started bleeding badly. Blood spread across the shiny black studio floor. Hogan gave him a few light slaps on the face, and thankfully, Belzer woke up. He was confused and hurt, but he managed to call for a commercial break. This incident didn't just go away. On his next show, Belzer showed the video clip of what happened. He made it very clear that this wasn't land. He had no idea Hogan was going to do this. To prove how serious his injury was, he showed a close-up of the cut on his head, which needed 9 stitches at the hospital. Belzer was angry, and he had every right to be. He sued Hulk Hogan for $5 million. The case went all the way to the New York Supreme Court, but before a judge could make a final decision, both sides agreed to settle. Belzer received $400,000, and Hogan avoided more bad publicity. Belzer later said he used that money to buy a house in France. The two men never spoke again for the rest of Belzer's life. He died in February of 2023, and that relationship was never repaired. Surprisingly, this scandal didn't hurt WrestleMania at all. In fact, it might have helped. More people heard about the event because of all the media attention. Hogan stayed in the spotlight, and WrestleMania was a massive success. Over the next several years, Hogan became an international superstar. He appeared on talk shows, was featured on magazine covers, and wrestled in main events year after year. One of his most famous moments came at WrestleMania 3. He faced off against Andre the Giant, a legendary wrestler who was absolutely enormous, in an incredible display of strength. Hogan actually lifted Andre off his feet and slammed him down onto the mat. Then he finished him off with his signature leg drop. Fans still talk about this moment today as one of the greatest in wrestling history. Hogan held on to the championship until 1989, when he finally lost it to Andre. Throughout the early 90s, Hogan continued to be successful in the ring. He had exciting rivalries with wrestlers like Macho Man Randy Savage and The Ultimate Warrior. But outside the ring, things were getting complicated. Some people who worked with him started saying negative things. They said that while Hogan was great in the ring, they didn't like what he did outside of it. They felt he wasn't a good role model for young people. They said he didn't practice what he preached. Then came the steroid scandal. In 1991, news reports revealed that Hogan's personal doctor, a man named George Zahorian, had been illegally selling steroids to wrestlers. Steroids are drugs that help people build muscle, but they've been illegal to use this way since 1988. Hogan's name came up in the investigation. The WWF's lawyers worked hard to protect him, making sure he wouldn't have to testify in court. Instead, The doctor's own lawyer made a statement saying that both Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan had definitely gotten steroids from his client. The doctor was found guilty and sent to prison for 3 years. Hogan tried to defend himself on television. He went on a popular talk show and said that people were spreading lies about him. He insisted he wasn't a steroid abuser. He said he'd been training 2 hours a day for 20 years to look the way he did. He claimed he'd only used steroids 3 times in his career, and that was when doctors prescribed them to help heal an injury. But the accusations didn't stop. A former colleague even said publicly that he had personally injected Hogan with steroids. After WrestleMania 8 in the spring of 1992, Vince McMahon made a decision. He pulled Hogan out of the spotlight. Hogan didn't appear in the ring for almost a year. When he did come back, it was only for a short time. Then he left the WWF to pursue acting in movies. But the steroid story wasn't over. In 1993, Vince McMahon himself went on trial in New York. The government accused him of distributing steroids to his wrestlers and forcing them to use them. 11 wrestlers were called to testify against him. One of the biggest names on that list was Hulk Hogan. By this time, Hogan was working for a rival wrestling company called WCW. To get him to testify, the prosecution made a deal with him. They promised he wouldn't get in any trouble for his own steroid use if he told the truth about McMahon. Everyone expected Hogan to say terrible things about his former boss. Maybe he was angry. Maybe he wanted revenge. But when Hogan took the stand, he surprised everyone. Yes, he admitted he had used steroids. He said his doctor had mailed them to him, and that doctor was now in prison for it. But he said something that shocked the courtroom. He said that Vince McMahon had never encouraged him or forced him to use steroids. Never. On July 23, 1994, after 16 hours of discussion, the jury announced their decision. Vince McMahon was not guilty. If Hogan had testified differently that day, the entire World Wrestling Federation might have ended right there. The company could have been destroyed. But Hogan's testimony helped save it. However, many of Hogan's colleagues were angry with him. They remembered all those times he had lied, saying he never used steroids. They felt betrayed. The Ultimate Warrior, one of his biggest rivals, called him out years later, making fun of the way Hogan used to tell kids to take their vitamins. Behind the scenes, wrestlers would joke about it, because in wrestling slang, vitamins was actually a code word for steroids. Jesse Ventura, another wrestler who worked with Hogan, said he couldn't understand why Hogan lied for so long when everyone knew the truth. After the trial, Hogan focused on his career with WCW. He won championships there and formed a famous group called the New World Order with Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. This group became incredibly popular and dominated WCW shows. Hogan had great matches against legends like Sting, Randy Savage, and Ric Flair. But in October of 1999, something strange happened. The new creative director at WCW, a man named Vince Russo, asked Hogan to take a break from television. When Hogan came back in February of 2000, there was trouble. At an event called Bash at the Beach, Hogan had a match for the championship. Behind the scenes, Hogan wanted to win the title, but Russo wanted him to lose. They eventually agreed on a compromise. Hogan won the match, but then Russo came out and gave a speech where he went too far. He insulted Hogan with horrible language and fired him on live television. The audience also learned something shocking. Hogan had a special clause in his contract too. That let him reject any creative ideas he didn't like about his character. This gave him enormous power. That was Hogan's last appearance in WCW. He felt his reputation had been damaged, so he sued Russo, but the lawsuit was eventually dismissed in 2002. After having knee surgery, Hogan returned to the World Wrestling Federation in February of 2002. He came back as a villain, leading the New World Order. But within weeks, he became a hero again. He made history by becoming the last undisputed WWF champion before the company changed its name to World Wrestling Entertainment because of a lawsuit with the World Wildlife Fund. Hogan had more great matches, but he left WWE after just a year because he wasn't happy. He wrestled in Japan again briefly. Then, in 2005, he came back to WWE one more time. The night before WrestleMania 21, he received a great honor. He was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame alongside his old rivals, Rowdy Roddy Piper and the Iron Sheik. His friend, the famous actor Sylvester Stallone, gave the speech. Hogan's final match in WWE was in 2006 when he defeated a young Randy Orton. In 2010, Hogan joined another wrestling company called Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, but his past kept catching up with him. Former colleagues like Dink the Clown and The Ultimate Warrior publicly said they had no respect for him. They called him fake, saying everything about him was an act. The Ultimate Warrior even called him a pathological liar who couldn't handle reality. Then, in 2012, something truly shocking happened. A video was released showing Hulk Hogan having sex with the wife of a radio host named Bubba the Love Sponge. The three of them had been good friends. Hogan said he had no idea he was being recorded. Bubba and his wife Heather had secretly recorded it on their home surveillance camera and burned it onto a DVD. 5 years later, somehow, that DVD ended up in public. In October of 2012, a news website called Gawker published a short clip from the video on their site. Hogan was furious. He sued them, demanding they take it down. The court initially said that publishing it wasn't illegal, so they dismissed his lawsuit. But Hogan didn't give up. He filed another lawsuit, this time demanding $100 million in damages. He said the video had hurt him emotionally and invaded his privacy. In the end, a jury awarded him $115 million. Gawker tried to appeal, but it was too late. In June of 2016, Gawker had to file for bankruptcy. A few months later, they settled with Hogan for $31 million. Even after winning the case, the video continued to cause problems for Hogan. In interviews, he admitted he'd made mistakes. At the time the video was recorded, he was going through a divorce from his wife Linda. He acknowledged that sleeping with his friend's wife was wrong. He said he was accountable for his actions and that it was very embarrassing. He hoped people could learn from his mistakes. Hogan returned to WWE in 2014 after being gone for almost 8 years. He hosted WrestleMania 30, where he made a funny mistake, calling the arena in New Orleans the Silver Dome, which was actually in Detroit. People still laugh about that today. The next year, he inducted his late friend Randy Savage into the Hall of Fame. He also briefly reunited with the New World Order to support Sting in a match. As he walked to the ring playing air guitar with his friends, he had no idea this would be his last WWE appearance for a very long time. In July of 2015, another video from 2007 was released. This one showed Hogan talking to Bubba and Heather after having sex with Heather. In the video, Hogan said racist things. He was angry about his daughter Brooke's music career and criticized her boyfriend, who was black. He used the N-word multiple times. He said horrible racist things, suggesting he didn't want his daughter dating black men. At one point, he even said that everyone is a little bit racist. A few days later, a transcript from another video appeared. In this one, Hogan made homophobic comments, using hateful slurs to describe someone. The reaction was immediate and severe. WWE fired Hogan. They removed everything about him from their website. They took him out of the Hall of Fame. They pulled all his merchandise from stores. They even removed him from a video game that was still being developed. WWE released a statement saying they were committed to celebrating people from all backgrounds and that they'd made the right decision. Hogan was devastated. In a tearful interview with ABC News, he tried to apologize. He said he was at a low point in his life when those videos were made. He insisted he wasn't a racist, but admitted he never should have said those things. In the interview, you could see a side of Hogan that fans rarely saw. He was emotional, crying, and clearly ashamed. When he started talking about his daughter, he broke down completely and had to pause the interview. People had mixed reactions. Some friends defended him. Dwayne. The Rock Johnson said he'd known Terry for many years and had never known him to be racist. Boxer George Foreman said Hogan wasn't a racist and was a good guy, but others weren't so forgiving. For 3 long years, Hogan was banned from WWE. Finally, on July 15, 2018, WWE announced they were bringing Hogan back into the Hall of Fame. They said he'd apologized multiple times and had been doing volunteer work with young people. Some wrestlers, like Mark Henry, who had been very critical of Hogan before, said they believed he genuinely wanted to make things right. They could see that Hogan was hurt by how people now looked at him differently. Hogan made his first appearance back at an event in Saudi Arabia called Crown Jewel. He was happy to be back. A year later, in December of 2019, he received another special honor. WWE announced that Hogan, along with Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and Sean Waltman, would be inducted into the Hall of Fame as a group, the New World Order. This made Hogan one of the very few wrestlers ever to be inducted into the Hall of Fame twice. But even with all these honors, Hogan's reputation remains damaged. Many people he worked with over the years have said he was difficult, thinking he was more important than everyone else. They said he saw himself as the top dog, and everyone else as backup. Players. His ego burned many bridges that can never be rebuilt. So what's the final word on Hulk Hogan? There's no denying his impact on wrestling. He's one of the greatest of all time. He helped create a boom in the industry that we still see the effects of today. He inspired countless young people. He became a role model for multiple generations. His matches are legendary. His charisma was undeniable. For millions of people, he was the hero of their childhood. But there's another side to this story, a darker side. He seriously hurt a television host who was just trying to do his job. He abused steroids for years and lied about it repeatedly. He acted selfishly throughout his career, using his power to get what he wanted. And he said racist and homophobic things about people when he thought no one was listening. Inside the ring, he was often the hero. But outside the ring, he sometimes became the villain. The truth is, Hulk Hogan is complicated. He's both the inspiring hero and the flawed human being. He gave us incredible moments that we'll never forget, but he also did things that were hard to forgive. His story reminds us that our heroes aren't perfect. They're just people, with all the mistakes and problems that come with being human. If you found this video eye-opening, please hit that like button. Share it with your friends who love wrestling, or anyone who remembers watching Hulk Hogan as a kid. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the untold stories behind your favorite wrestlers and celebrities. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.